Hi, my name is Chloe Collins, and this is my puppetry performance project. So I was in the red group, and the way that we split it up is I'm only going to be covering the performance criteria for each different kind of puppetry. So let's go ahead and start. I wanted to first note what puppet theater was in the first place, just for some context. So it is a type of performance that utilizes puppets or other inanimate objects to tell a story. Even though we're only covering it in theater today, it has crossed platforms onto television and into movies. The first kind of puppetry we're going to talk about today is shadow puppets. So in its beginning, it was performed by puppeteers using rods and or figures made of leather or paper. And the way that shadow puppetry works is you have the puppet, then you have a linen cloth and a light that is illuminating it from the back, and that's what's going to cast the shadow of the puppet for the audience. Larger performances usually consist of 7 to 9 puppeteers, while smaller performances are only going to consist of 2 to 5. So it is a smaller production compared to other different kinds of theater. This type of performance has broken the fourth wall before, although it's not required to be considered shadow puppetry. Shadow puppet performances make use of singing, musical instruments, and a puppeteer's ability to use multiple puppets at once. Some theater conventions that are important for this type of performance include actors being able to play multiple roles using lyrical voices and even dramatic voices to convey more emotion, and utilizing that fourth wall. I would also say another really important one is narration for sure. And although shadow puppetry has been practiced for centuries with its roots in Asia, people do consider it to be a dying art form. And to go off of its roots in Asia, people do say it was established in China millennia ago, and it was passed through generations with elders showing the younger parts of their family how to do it. It was used as a device to share cultural history, social beliefs, and customs, and as well as just being a form of entertainment that was mostly used for kids to teach them about their culture. Today it is still performed, but it has adapted to screens. Silhouette animation has come forth, and it mimics the look of shadow play. Although it does look a bit different today, a typical shadow puppet performance is going to show a pretty basic plain stage, and then the shadow puppet is just going to show or tell the story using its voice, using music, song, all of that. Here's some different examples of shadow puppetry. And then that brings us to our next different kind of puppetry, which is going to be bunraku. So a bunraku performance is a traditional puppet theater established in Japan. It uses a half life-size doll that chants dramatic narratives through the narrator, which brings me to my next thing. There are 5 different people that put on a bunraku show. It's going to be the 3 puppeteers, one controlling the lower part of the body, one controlling the mid body, and then one controlling the head. And the other 2 people that contribute to the bunraku performance are going to be the narrator and the shamisen. So the 3 detrimental parts of bunraku, the 3 detrimental elements, are going to be those 5 people. The main 3 elements, how I said, are the 5 people, and the National Bunraku Theater in Osaka, Japan typically only puts on 5 of these performances each year, with each 5 only lasting about 2 weeks. So it has changed slightly over the years. Before 1734, the puppets were only orchestrated by one non-visible puppeteer, which is very different from today, as it's controlled by 3 puppeteers, and all 3 are visible to the audience. Also, before 1715, the shamisen, which I should have said earlier, they control the music for the play. They kind of create a sort of ambiance, a sort of atmosphere for the audience. Before 1715, the narrator and shamisen, they were also not allowed to be visible to the audience, which is also very different today, as now they sit on like a raised platform to the side of the main stage, so the audience can see them as well. And I would like to note, bunraku does not break the fourth wall, but something it does do is it offers a presentational style of performance, which means although it doesn't break the fourth wall, the audience is aware that they are watching a performance the whole time, as they can see the narrator, they can see the shamisen, they can see the puppet being controlled by these people. So even though the puppet's not directly addressing the audience is aware the whole time that they are watching the production. More on Bunraku is that some theater conventions include dramatic staging, narration, and the use of music. This is all what brings Bunraku to life. And a typical Bunraku performance is going to feature the narrator and the shamisen first, with the narrator giving some background of the story, and the shamisen is going to be playing music to set the tone for the story coming along, and then that is when the puppet's going to come out. So this is what a typical Bunraku performance looks like. You can see the shamisen and the narrator that are on their little side stage. And then here you can see, and here you can see the puppet being controlled by the 3 puppeteers all dressed in black. So the next different kind that we're going to cover today is hand puppets. So the name of hand puppetry is very literal. It is literally just a puppet being controlled by someone's hand. And I would say it's one of the more broader categories of puppetry. A hand puppet is performed by a puppeteer who uses their hand on the interior side of the puppet. The stage in hand puppetry, it's not so important. It mainly relies on like the tone of the person playing the puppet. Hand puppetry can break the fourth wall to engage the audience more, although it does not have to every time. It does use the fourth wall to engage the audience. There is no set limit as to how many performances hand puppetry can have. Kind of relies on the puppeteer's schedule. Hand puppetry includes interaction with the audience, as in breaking the fourth wall at times, voice modification, and using a small stage that only covers the puppeteer. And I would say another theater convention it uses is narration for sure. The dialogue is very important to convey just the story and the setting. And the use of technology has changed this type of puppetry over time. So hand puppetry definitely has evolved from its beginnings, as the puppets themselves can have more complex expressions on them to convey more emotion. It's adapted to television, and it used to be known as just kind of like a children's theater, like a children kind of puppet, but now they are making different kinds of hand puppet performances that convey more complex themes for an adult audience. Here you can see some pictures. This is like a literal hand puppet, and then here you can see like a cloth or a like made hand puppet being used by a child or being performed right here. So the final and last type of puppetry we're going to cover is rod puppets. Rod puppets are puppets, they're the same, they're very literal. They are literally just puppets that are used by a support rod that goes through the inside of a puppet's body and its head, and there are separate rods that are used to operate the hands and the legs. Like hand puppets, they are operated by puppeteers, and depending on their complexity, puppeteers can use multiple of these kinds of puppets at once. The performance of this kind of puppet has changed over time due to the materials used to make the puppets, as now you have these huge rod puppets that need multiple rods and multiple people to use, but before they were just very simple, like 1 or 2 rods. There is not a fixed amount of performances this type of puppetry has each year, as like the last kind of puppetry. It just really depends on the puppeteer's schedule, but I would say this is a pretty popular form of puppetry. And then here are some examples. Here you can see like rods being used to move the hands and the arms, and you have some complex ones like the ones here, and then some more simple ones. And then that's going to be it for me. Those are all of the different kinds of performance criteria for each of the different kinds of puppets. In my humble opinion, I think Bunraku is definitely the most interesting and most engaging, definitely the most fun to learn about. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this project, and that's it from me.